Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. Welcome to the Security where we discuss security with a focus on how it affects the computer and the services and resources that the computer connects to. In Part 12, Configuring SOHO Routers and Wireless Hubs, we discuss the security side of home routers, switches, and wireless access points. We will discuss what you should do when you first get your router, switch, or firewall, universal plug-and-play, wireless access authentication encryption, wireless interference, wardriving, IP filtering, content filtering, screen subnets, also known as DMZ, and port forwarding. For those who are going to take the A+ exam, there are practice questions at the end of the video. If you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Small Office Home Office LAN, or SOHO, is a small computer network usually built of one Ethernet switch, one router, and one wireless access point. You can find wireless access point/routers that consist of an Ethernet switch, a router, and a wireless access point. SOHO network is a common local area deployment for homes and small offices. A wireless network that consists of an access point and some wireless devices including laptops, tablets, and smartphones. They provide mobility within a limited geographic area, usually uses 802.11 technology, multiple access points can be linked, and wireless bridges might be used to connect devices between two buildings. Here's another example of SOHO network where your cable provider connects the services to a coaxial cable jack. You then use the coaxial cable to connect to your router/wireless access point, which will provide your WAN connection and connection to the internet. You would then connect your computers to your built-in switch or use wireless connections. When you acquire a router, switch, or wireless access point, including any combination of devices, they will come with the default password. Hackers will try the default password for these devices. These passwords grant full administrative access. Therefore, it's very important that you change the default passwords before you do anything else. Many major breaches occurred because the default password was not changed on these type of devices. If you don't know the default password, you can go to routerspassword.com. Common default passwords and passwords is admin/admin, admin or root, and no password. Similar to computers, routers, and switches, wireless access points and firewalls have firmware which contains the built-in device software. Similar to computers, updates are provided by the manufacturer and can fix bugs, introduce new features, and provide security patches. It is recommended to install the latest firmware, and you should check for updates and update the firmware on a regular basis. Universal Plug-and-Play, or UPnP, is a network protocol that allows apps and devices to open and close ports automatically in order to connect with each other. UPnP requires zero configuration, whereas you can add a new device to your network and have it automatically connect with your other devices. UPnP is a way to make port forwarding automated and easier than a manual process. For example, if you want to connect a printer to everyone in the household without UPnP, you would need to connect the printer to every single device. UPnP automates this. For networks, zero configuration means that none of these devices on your network need manual configuration to discover a new device. UPnP-enabled devices can automatically join a network, obtain an IP address, and find and connect to other devices on your network, making it very convenient. No approval is needed. Since no approval is needed and you don't know what can automatically be added to your network, it is best practice to disable UPnP. It can also be used to remote access to other devices connected to the same network, install malware on your device, and steal your sensitive information. Home routers will have a minimum 2 connections. WAN connection, which allows connection to the internet, which is provided by your internet service provider or ISP. One or more LAN connections usually consist of multiple Ethernet connections and/or wireless connections. Most ISPs will dynamically allocate WAN addresses. However, some ISP packages will allow you to have a static IP address, which typically costs more money. If your home router has a static IP address, your corporate IT team will always know the IP address. Most wireless access points and home routers can provide DHCP or automatic services to automatically assign IP addresses to the clients that connects to the access points and home routers. Static addresses are more difficult since you need to manually configure each IP addresses and related settings. DHCP addresses make it easier to connect devices to the network by automatically configuring IP. You can use address reservations so that the device can always get the same IP address. Address reservations are assigned to MAC addresses of the device. Routers, switches, and firewalls in corporations and organizations should be secure using a secure room such as a server room or telecom closet with locked doors and restricted access. Some of the equipment in the server room could be in a locked cabinet. For wireless networks, popular frequency bands the FCC has assigned for unlicensed use are 2.4 GHz and 5.0 GHz. Use of these bands does not require filing with the FCC. The 2.4 GHz band is slower but can reach further. The 5 GHz band is faster but does not penetrate objects like walls or doors as well as the 2.4 GHz. If you're in the same room as your router and your machine has a direct line of sight, 5 GHz will most likely give you the best performance unless you have interference. Each range is divided into a multitude of channels. The 2.4 and 5.0 GHz Wi-Fi signal range comprises of smaller bands or channels. For 2.4 GHz in the United States, any Wi-Fi channels 1 through 11 can be chosen when setting up a wireless LAN. There are overlapping channels. Channels 1, 6, and 11 are distinct channels that don't overlap with each other. For 5 GHz, there are 25 channels with no overlapping. Some wireless access points will automatically find good frequencies. Wireless access points need to be secured too, but the security does have limited by the need to provide coverage. You may consider placing the wireless access points in a secure room, but they usually need to be placed where they can cover the clients. Therefore, install your APs in central locations away from corners, walls, or other physical obstructions, if any, to provide maximum signal coverage. For larger places and/or multiple floors, you may need to place multiple access points. You may consider placing them in high points in the office or building. Remember that you may need to power cycle the wireless access points. Interference is a risk of running a wireless network and can bring down the network performance and availability. To help avoid interference, you should place the access points as far away from the devices such as microwaves, cordless phones, and Bluetooth devices that generate electromagnetic signals and radio waves. If your AP supports dual band or tri-band operations, use the 5 GHz band instead of the 2.4 GHz band whenever possible. The 5 GHz band typically experiences less interference due to fewer devices operating on that frequency. Remember that concrete, brick, and other dense materials can block the Wi-Fi signals, and even less dense materials will reduce the range of the radio signals. If you're in an office building that have multiple tenants, you'll most likely have to contend with several other wireless networks where you may need to adjust signal strength and channels. Less signal strength means less outside people can connect to the network. If you do not want signals to reach outside, you need to reduce the transmit power of the AP to limit its coverage area to the desired space so that the signal does not leak outside. Use signal blocking materials such as metal or dense foam to block signals from reaching areas where you don't want them. If you do choose to have signals outside and you want to protect the network, you need to ensure that you have strong encryption and authentication mechanism to prevent unauthorized access. Wardriving involves hackers searching for wireless networks with vulnerabilities while moving around an area, usually in a moving vehicle. They use hardware and software to discover unsecured Wi-Fi networks, then gain unauthorized access to the network by cracking passwords or decrypting the router. Again, you need to ensure that you have strong encryption and authentication, and you have installed the necessary updates, including drivers and firmware. Routers, managed switches, and firewalls can filter traffic based on IP. Home routers can also perform IP filtering. You can create an allow list, which is nothing is allowed unless it is on the list. Allow list is very restrictive. Or you can do the deny list, which allows all traffic unless it is on the deny list. The list can be based on specific URLs, domains, and IP addresses. Firewalls and some home routers can filter traffic based on content. Content filtering on home routers refers to the ability to control or restrict access to certain types of content on the internet. It allows users to block specific websites, keywords, or categories of content deemed inappropriate or undesirable. Some home routers will have parental control that will protect their children from accessing harmful or inappropriate material online. Organizations to enforce acceptable use policies on the network. Home routers and firewalls can provide anti-malware protection. Content filtering can be based on URL filtering and website category filtering. Firewalls and some home routers can provide stateful packet inspection, or SPI, which is a form of intelligent filtering. Stateful firewalls will keep track of conversations that were initiated internally. If traffic is a response to a conversation, the network traffic is allowed into the network and routed to the respective client that started the conversation. If traffic is not a response to the conversation, the network traffic is blocked. Screened subnets, also known as the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, provides an additional layer of security between your internal network and system and services that you need to be publicly accessible from the internet. Typically, web services, email front-end servers, external DNS servers, file transfer servers, and proxy servers are found in screened subnets. When you connect to a home wireless network or corporate networks, you'll have to specify the name of the wireless network or service set identifier, or SSID. And usually you have to specify a known passkey for the network. Open systems will not require an authentication password. It is recommended to rename the SSID from the default wireless SSID, such as Linksys, Default, or Netgear, so that it's not obvious what kind of wireless access point you are using. You should also disable SSID broadcasting so that the SSID names are not broadcasted for all to see. However, keep in mind that the SSID can easily be determined through wireless network. By hiding the SSID, you're performing security through obscurity. Using WPA2 or WPA3 encryption is a much better security solution. There are multiple wireless security protocols throughout the years. Wi-Fi protected areas, or WPA, is an interim standard prior to the ratification of 802.11i standard. WPA provides strong data encryption via temporal key integrity protocol, or DKIP. Wi-Fi protected access 2, or WPA2, provides enhanced data encryption via advanced encryption standard, AES, which meets the Federal Information Standard, FIPS, 140-2 requirements of some government agencies. Wi-Fi protected access 3, or WPA3, provides even more enhancements, including brute force protection and public network privacy. WPA2 and WPA3, if your device is supported, are recommended over others. WPA, WPA2, and WPA3 can be divided into personal and enterprise. WPA, WPA2, and WPA3 personal uses a pre-shared password which is used by all connections. WPA Enterprise, WPA2 Enterprise, and WPA3 Enterprise uses 802.1x to provide an authentication framework for wireless LANs, usually used in corporate environments. It allows a user to be authenticated by a central authority such as a radius server. Enterprise mode uses two sets of keys, the session keys and group keys. The session keys are unique to each client associated between an access point and a wireless client. Group keys are shared among all clients connected to the same access point. Both sets of keys are generated dynamically and are rotated to help safeguard the integrity of keys over time. The encryption keys could be supplied through a certificate or smart card. Of those, enterprise is more secure than personal since every connection uses a different key. Some home routers will have guest networks and/or IoT networks available. Guest networks give you the convenience for your guests to connect to the internet without having access to your internal network. Make sure you use different password than your private network, and you should consider using WPA2 or WPA3 encryption. You might consider disabling guest networks to limit access to outsiders. Often, guest networks are often enabled by default. Some home routers will allow you to enable an IoT network, which is a dedicated wireless network to manage your IoT devices together, such as smart lights and cameras. This should always be enabled with security such as WPA2 or WPA3. In corporate networks, you will have a wall jack connected to a patch panel, which will connect to a switch. For better security, you should disable those ports where you don't have anything connected and don't expect anything to connect to the ports. You can administratively disable ports on switches. While enabling and disabling ports is more work, it is more secure. You can also use 802.1x to have the clients authenticate before you can connect to a switch or wireless access point. 802.1x is a network authentication protocol that opens ports for network access when an organization authenticates a user's entity and authorizes them for access to the network. The user's entity is determined based on their credentials or certificate, which is confirmed by the Radius server. The Radius server is able to do this by communicating with the organization's directory, typically over the LDAP or SAML protocol. You can also use Network Access Control, or NAC, which will not allow components that connect to the network if they're not in compliant, such as if they do not have the newest operating system updates or using an up-to-date anti-malware package. Port forwarding, also known as port mapping or static NAT, allows remote servers and devices on the internet to access the devices that are within your private local area network and vice versa. Without port forwarding, only devices that are part of the internal network can access each other, and with port forwarding, anyone can, including those from the internet. Essentially, port forwarding maps an external IP and port number to an internal IP address and port number. You do not have to use the same port for external and internal connections. Port forwarding can be used to remote access your internal systems, gaming, IP camera access, and file sharing. While port forwarding provides convenience and flexibility, it also exposes devices and services to potential security risks. You need to ensure that the internal services is properly secured or any vulnerabilities could be exploited. Therefore, it's crucial to implement port forwarding judiciously and apply appropriate security measures, including using strong passwords, keeping software up to date, and monitoring network traffic. Question: configure a wireless access point inside a small office that is located in a crowded office building. Which of the following should you perform to increase the security of the wireless network? Choose two answers. Answer: reduce the transmit power and implement WPA2 or WPA3 encryption. You just purchased a new SOHO Wi-Fi router. What is the first thing you should do? Answer: change the default password. Question: when you set up a wireless network, what can you do if you're experiencing interference from other wireless networks? Answer: change the channels. Question: you replace your SOHO router. However, customers cannot access the company-hosted public website. Which of the following is most likely the problem? Answer: you need to configure port forwarding. Question: which of the following will you find on a DMZ? Choose two answers. Answer: SFTP server and web server. For more information, visit these sites. In summary, when you acquire a router, switch, or wireless access points, including any combination of devices, you should change the default password and update the firmware. Universal Plug and Play, or UPnP, is a network protocol that allows apps and devices to open and close ports automatically in order to connect with each other. It should be disabled. Interference is the risk of running a wireless network and can bring down the network's performance and availability. Wardriving involves hackers searching for wireless networks with vulnerabilities while moving around in an area, usually in a moving vehicle. Routers, managed switches, and firewalls can filter traffic based on IP, specific URLs, domains, or IP addresses. Content filtering on home routers refers to the ability to control or restrict access to certain types of content on the internet. Screen subnets, also known as the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, provides an additional layer of security between your internal network and system and services that you need to publicly accessible from the internet. WPA2 and WPA3, if your device is supported, are recommended over other encryption mechanisms. Some home routers will have a guest network and/or IoT network available. For better security, you should disable those ports where you don't have anything connected and don't expect anything to connect to the ports. You can also use the 802.1x to have the clients authenticate before you connect to a switch or wireless access point. Port forwarding, also known as port mapping or static NAT, allows remote servers and devices on the internet to access the devices that are within your private local area network and vice versa. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be Security, Part 13, Data Destruction and Disposal Methods. If you have not already, don't forget to subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Thank you.